So how did I work out roughly where I think the aircraft took off? I found the CCTV, the camera, went through a whole bunch of different dates of aerial imagery on Google Earth, work out roughly where the correct lines should be, and I've come up with a pretty good outer and inner marker for the left-hand side and right-hand side of the power hut, and I superimpose that over the image that you saw previously. I've since changed the numbers to, instead of being seconds of the minute that really happened, it's seconds from takeoff roll. Now these, don't trust these in this video, they're not correct. I've discontinued, I don't care about this anymore. But takeoff was indeed somewhere around here. The latest video that I put out, I had the hut in the correct spot. 40 was marked as being right there, so I do believe, according to the timestamps from the Flight Radar 24, it's according to that, not necessarily the onboard aircraft clock. According to the data from Flight Radar 24, which would be the transponder times, and this should be pretty close to what's on board the aircraft. Okay, the Flight Radar 24 data I don't believe is some world time. I think it's the time that the aircraft sent. I'm not 100% on that, but nonetheless, the point on the ground where it took off is absolutely categorically correct. It is there, somewhere right here. It is not further down. It can't be. The first timestamp in air mode did come out here, but it takes a second for it to start reporting that. So it's actually down here somewhere. Okay, so that would actually end up being on the very right-hand side of the image of the ram air turbine photo in the preliminary report. The very right-hand side of that image would be roughly where the aircraft came off the ground, I believe, if I remember that this line was the very right-hand side. So look, that's how I worked it out. It was not based on guesswork. It wasn't based on timestamps. It was based on that there. And the fact that right in the middle of the hut, in fact, just ever before the middle, so probably somewhere here, was where the wheels came off the ground. Now, incidentally, I've looked at many 787 takeoff videos, and this takeoff roll is not terribly long. It's not that unusual. Most that I see do take 1.6 kilometers, but this is not terrible. Most would get off the ground by about here, by about there. So it's about 40% more than it should be. So that begs the question, was something going wrong on the takeoff roll? A latest suggestion, I haven't focused on this too much, I didn't care, but as we're talking about loss of instrument and battery bus, I then watched a video recently from an Indian technician talking about when they're walking around the aircraft, when someone turns the battery switch on and off, they can hear the EBPSU, the electronic brake power supply units, ticking on and off. So perhaps what we saw was resetting of the DC buses, including the battery bus, during the takeoff roll, and then that resetting caused the brakes to do their brake testing, which is the testing application of the brakes, the EBPSU flickering the brake cycles. This technician that was on board the aircraft in this YouTube video mentioned that when mechanics on the ground are walking around and the aircraft is being turned on with the battery switch, they can hear the ticking of the brakes as it does its test cycle. So perhaps it was doing its test cycle on the takeoff run. That would be applying the brakes, and perhaps that's why this slowed down and needed a bit extra time to get off the ground. I have no idea. That is totally guesswork and hypothesizing. But apparently it got off the ground a bit too slow. Time that it took the aircraft to get from here to there, that could be a result of brakes, or it could be because they started the takeoff roll very slowly and didn't apply full power until later on. They may have just been rolling, looking at something, which is pretty bad and not a standard procedure, but we don't know. We haven't got any data from back here. All we have in the preliminary report is the mention of the aircraft starting the takeoff roll. It doesn't tell you what sort of power was applied, how fast it was going, just the start of the takeoff roll. That could be anything. We don't have that. Anyhow, but look, it did come off the ground right there. Right there. And in the sequence of things back timed from the Flight Radar 24 data, that equates to roughly from the last timestamp, well, from the RAT timestamp, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, approximately 7 to 8 seconds before the RAT photo was taken. Okay, so the RAT photo was taken about 7 to 8 seconds after the aircraft left the ground. Thanks.